Hello and welcome back. Sean here, Mountains Garage, on a sunny Friday afternoon, evening almost. I am on standby. If you remember, I mentioned a week ago I brought my wife to the airport. Well, tonight I have to pick her up. Currently, with the flight delays between here and California, between Maine and California, I'm in Maine, she's in California. She's gonna get in around 2 a.m. So probably after I get done messing with old junk, I might cook myself dinner, take a little nap, and prepare for my moonlit journey. Hopefully moonlit, hopefully not raining, we'll see. So I had an excellent viewer request. The viewer happens to be my buddy Charlie. He said, hey, how about a video about how to install a torque converter? And it made me think, if I had it to do all over again, which I don't, I just started making videos and I happened to start talking about transmissions, Turbo 400s in particular. And the next thing you know, I'm over 100 Turbo 400 videos in no particular order. I think I've done an okay job, marking them. If you go to the Turbo 400 playlist on my channel, you might find the information that you need. I'm continually doing more, and I answer questions all the time that are often in the videos, but you have to find the video to watch it. So I understand you might not have time to watch 100 videos before you ask a question. But I didn't start with the simple things. I just started in like I go about everything else, assuming everybody knows everything, and I'm telling them things they already know. But that was not the case all the time. So let's start way back, and there's a lot more simple things we could be talking about, but at some point, if you build or buy a transmission and build or buy a torque converter, probably buy a torque converter, acquire, you're going to have to put the two together. So today's prop is a transmission I picked up last spring. I went to buy a Doug Nash 5-speed, which is sitting over there still from the day I brought it home. Haven't even cracked it open to see if it's any good. And while I was in the storage container on an early Sunday morning in Massachusetts, I left here at 4:30 a.m. to head down. I bought this Turbo 400 and a TH375. The TH375 has a converter stuck in that as well, with this makeshift ineffective wood piece to keep the converter from falling out, but it didn't keep it all the way in the pump, it just kept it from falling out. In a perfect world, if you're going to secure your torque converter for shipment, you probably ought to put a piece of bent metal, like bolted on here. You get the idea. GM has a really cool piece. I have a few of them out in the box. It's a metal piece that goes over here and bolts on using all 4 bolts right here. Pretty heavy duty. So what do we have here? It's a 1972 CJ Turbo 400. CJ, according to my semi-accurate list, is a C10, 20, or 30. And judging by the fact it doesn't have a bolt-on yoke, maybe it's a C10 or 20 with the most confusing big block Chevy of all time. In 1970 and beyond, 71 and 2, the 396 in a Chevelle or Camaro is a 402. In the Impala and in the trucks, they called it the big block 400 alongside the small block 400. So holy confusion, but imagine the joy when you open the hood and there are those giant 7-bolt valve covers, which have always made me happy. I love the shape of a big block valve cover when you're not expecting to find it. So this is out of a 72 big block C10, C20, whatever. Probably a C10, short bed. That's what I'm hoping. In my mind, it's the coolest short bed on the planet. Now, it's had some work done to it. It's actually a really nice core, which is why I bought it. Quickly looking at it, it's clean-ish. Clearly, somebody loved it and painted it at some point. Written on the bell housing, it says 400 turbo, shift kit and stall converter. Now this old stall converter, which I question whether it's ever been used, although the transmission had nice red oil in it, you could hardly see where it would engage the crank. And this is probably a reused Vega torque converter, who knows. It's definitely a B&M, says right on it. I've Googled the part number, and it's obsolete now, of course. Super hole, excuse me, super hole shot. All of a sudden I couldn't speak. B&M super hole shot, 28 to 3200 stall. So, interestingly, I'm looking at the size of that hub pilot, so I had to go get my weld-on pieces and my micrometer, and the only part that's engaged in the crank in a traditional Chevy application is about 3/16 of an inch right here. This is too big to fit the crank. Only that little hub goes in there. That's pretty scary. I guess we didn't worry about thrust problems back then. This will be an excellent candidate if I ever wanted to try it, to put my weld-on piece on and put it behind an LS, but I'm not saying, well, you'd have to try it. Like most torque converters, it's kind of like a box of chocolates. You got to bite into it. In this case, you got to put it in the car and see what it's going to do, because no matter how much you spend on a torque converter, you're going to get in a range somewhere. And I'm sure even your low buck stall converters of today are probably more efficient than this 70s or 80s vintage converter. So, it's, you know, for what the intent of this transmission might be, I'm probably going to build it as a street transmission, probably clean this up, put it right back in it, and use it in some, you know, non-racing application, street rig. It's dual bolt pattern. I see these listed now for crazy money for what they are. You know, $500–600 for this torque converter. That gets you a long ways towards something more decent, but that's not the subject of today's video. The subject of today's video is installing your torque converter into your transmission without causing any harm. So let's assume you have a rebuilt transmission. It already has a new seal, and the bushing is in good shape, and your hub is in good shape, and the converter is not full of metal and old black fluid or whatever the transmission came out of. It's either perfectly clear, maybe going back into the same transmission it came out of, or it's new and has no oil in it. All scenarios you have to take into account. And if your builder was a nice guy, he lubed up the bushing after he installed it, like I always do, and he lubed up the seal. So you don't want anything dry, but you don't want to belch oil all over your bell housing area, because then you're going to think it's leaking. So on that vein, if your torque converter is brand new and your instructions or logic tell you should put some oil in it, go ahead and dump some in, maybe up to a pint. I don't think you need a whole quart, but you can if you want to. But while you're doing that, gradually prop it up slowly so it runs down in the lower half and doesn't run out the hub. If you just dump it in and go to jam it in the transmission, it's just gonna come belching out the hole all over everything. So you wanna let it sit like this for a while. Let it seek its way down out of the way. So the hub itself, you can put just a little bit of oil on it, a little bit of lube, but you wanna make sure, or if you can see, look in and see that the bushing indeed has lube on it, you can omit that step if you'd like. But again, you don't want things going together dry. So what has to happen when you're installing the torque converter? Some people have, you know, their own methods. Some people really struggle with it. Personally, have never had an issue putting it together. I used to be the R&R, one of the R&R guys at the tranny shop, and we did it all day long, so I'm sure I was coached by one of the older guys about the easiest way to do it, which I'm going to show you. At least I think it's the easiest to do it, the old spin and jiggle. But what has to happen is 3 splines, well, 2 splines and a set of gears, set of lugs, your input shaft, your stator tube, and then your pump gears. In that order. When you're shoving a converter in, you have to go over logically, the one sticking out the furthest, as long as you can see that, is the one we have to engage first. And this actually spins, but not easy. So unlikely it's going to be spinning while you're trying to put the converter in. But we're going to be spinning the converter anyway. So we'll get it up over that one pretty easy. Next, we have to go onto the stator tube, which is bolted to the back of the pump, which is bolted to the case. This does not move. And this does. So should go on there pretty easy. And then the last thing we need to do is to engage the lugs into the pump gears. We've all seen that movie a few times. I got a set of pump gears there, but you know, they fit right down over there. And this is also where your correct spacing has to happen. 1/8, 1.25 to 1.87 gap right here on your pump gear. The converter needs to be pulled out so you're not jamming the converter into the gears themselves, ruining the pump. And as we, fluid has to go in and out as well. So that's that. So now we're ready to put it in. Now, let me get off my stool, get into action position. Again, ease it up this way to make sure oil's not going to come out. If it is, wait. Like that. Right on cue. Well, here comes the good use of an old sock. So let's go ahead and just dump it out. I guess it was just a little bit. So this is an old transmission on its way apart. But you saw how I just had it in, pulled it out, and now it's already leaking. So I like to get it up onto the input shaft, and you can rest it there for a minute while you get into position. Let's just do that. You don't have to line anything up. Just set it over there. We're not anywhere near the seal or the pump yet. I like to don't put your bare hand on the hub because it could have a sharp piece. I'm wearing a glove or use a rag. I like to grab here and grab one of the converter lugs. Just ease it on there. We're already on the input shaft. You heard the stator, and then you heard the pump gears. Now, if you're not sure it's all the way in, two things you can do. Clean up my oil. You can measure. If you were to measure from here to here, it's almost 1.1 inches, give or take. So it's got to be more than 1 inch clearance right there, or you're not all the way in. But a more effective way is to gently pull it back out a little bit, and then listen. You can feel it hit right there. Very solid. So let's do it again. Take it out. Pretend we're ready to go again. Just set it on the input. Grab it this way. Just gently. Are we there? Yep. Just like that. That time we didn't necessarily hear all three. Let's do it one more time. Why not? It's kind of fun. I can't wear the seal out. If you think of how many times and how much heat that seal can take, you probably couldn't wear it out. Let's just go ahead right into position now. I went in my install position. 2, 3, right there. Ease it out. We're in, just like that. If you've installed, say, upwards of 1/4 oil into the converter, and you get real happy continuing to spin it now that it's all the way in, you're actually turning the pump and starting to make pressure, and oil will eventually make its way out the bottom cooler line fitting and be drooling all over your transmission. So just like it's running, if you sit here and spin it in the proper direction of engine rotation, you're going to make pressure, enough to make a mess anyway. So the same thing happens. Let's say you pull the transmission out of the vehicle last night, you left it sitting on the jack, the converter's full, it's going to seek its level and find its way out somewhere. Typically either out of the cool line ports, out of the dipstick hole, wherever it can, if it can, oil will always find its way out. So that's it today. I shut the fan off in here to shoot the video. Getting a little warm. I think I'll turn it back on. So enjoy your Friday night. Take her easy.